Thank you, Coach, for sitting down and doing an interview with me. I have some questions and then some questions about the new rule that was inputted this year, with the pitch clock. And I have some interview questions from one of my co-hosts. He sent me a couple questions to ask you, and
Okay.
we're gonna start with his questions. I have so many texts, so I have to find his
Okay.
questions. So the first question he has is, let's see. Do you allow music in your locker room, or is it like an earplug thing?
Oh no, they blast the music in the locker room. They're actually most days you couldn't come to Bogle and not hear music everywhere. So we like to blast the music in the locker room. We blast it in the indoor. We play it on the field. It's very rarely ever quiet.
And then what kind of music do you like enjoy? Like, do you listen to what they listen to, or do you have your own
Well,
study music?
we let them choose most days. It just has to be clean. It makes me very uncomfortable if it's explicit in any way. And so it just kind of depends on the day. Like when we're doing bullpens inside and maybe hittings going on outside, our each pitcher decides or catcher decides what the vibe's going to be that day. So whether it's country, one of our pitchers really likes Bruno Mars radio, to just kind of mix it up and have a good beat. Um, and one of our pitchers likes pitching with no music. So you just never know. Everybody's very individual, but we just try to fit the vibe of the day.
All right. So now let's transition into this new pitch rule. The pitch clock. I have the interpretation from Vicky Van Kurt from the NFCA website I pulled it from, and they stating the pitcher has 20 seconds with the ball before it's delivered. After it's been caught, but she got it from the catcher. Can you
Yes.
interpret that more for us so we understand it?
Yeah, so it's from the time the ball is put in play, or like the umpire either signals like start the clock or it's back in play. The batter has 10 seconds to get into the box, and the pitcher has 20 seconds to deliver the pitch. So 10 seconds needs to get on the mound, and then they need to start delivering the pitch. So it's been interesting to see it applied, because there's some places we'll play won't have a visual clock, and so it's just kind of the pace that you have in your head. We have a visual clock at Bogle, which is very nice, so it's just kind of reiterates the pace that you're moving. We've practiced it quite a bit. We fortunately already kind of moved at that pace, so we like to keep the game moving, especially on defense. I think the bigger adjustment has been just getting the batters back in the box. And we've seen that applied a couple times. The first time we saw it applied was actually our first weekend. We were in Boca at FAU tournament, and we were fortunately on the better side of it, but we were on defense. They had a runner on, and it was a tight count, 2-strike count, and their batter took a little too long, and they put a strike on her, and that was the end of the inning. And we're like, yikes, that's a hard way to get your first dose of the pitch clock. But I think overall it's going to be really good for the game. I think it's going to speed it up. I think it's going to shave down a lot of that in between time that's not that important. But it's been interesting so far in the first 4 weeks.
And then also, like, you guys in the SAC conference tested out the replay system in your tournament, and now it's in full force, right?
Yes. Yes. So we have it in all of our conference games for sure. And then, like, Arkansas, have it in every game that's streamed. So every year, there's always one weekend that's really tight. When we have baseball, we have both basketballs, we have track, we have gymnastics, and those games aren't streamed. And then we don't have replay, which is kind of crazy when you grow accustomed to having replay and then not having it. But yeah, we have it in all of our SEC games, and then we Arkansas have it in probably 28 of our 32 home games.
And then speaking of like players, you know how we have the transfer portal, everyone's like kind of talking to how it's a big deal and it's not like we've talked about it a couple times on our show and we're like we had a person that and his family went to Colorado and like how's it on a coach's perspective with the transfer portal?
Well, it's different. It's a newer dynamic, but it's definitely where college athletics are, and I think it's just going to become even more of the norm as there's a little less regulation with it. And so it's interesting. I think finding it's just interesting. I don't know. It's interesting because, it's a different way of recruiting. It's a different way of kind of filling your roster, supplementing what you have. We've used it to supplement a lot. So, with here we've had with COVID or just kind of letting our players make their own decisions, and some of them make them late, and then it's kind of like, okay, well, we're counting on you to play, and so let's get a transfer to fill that spot. But we use it to supplement, not over recruit. And so you're seeing it kind of bulk up rosters. You're seeing it change the recruiting process because you have the ability to get a proven player out of Division One or whatever, as opposed to guessing on a recruit. So it's shifting recruits. I think what it's hurting most is the lower levels, like the travel ball, the recruiting, because I do think that some are just opting to recruit out of the portal as opposed to travel ball in high school.
Right, and it's also hurting like junior colleges trying to get players because of that whole transferness.
Yeah, I mean, there's an effect that has, trickled down all of our levels. I think that you can be helped by it or hurt by it. I know that, like, my dad was a junior college baseball coach for a long time. He just retired, and he's still obviously very connected to the program. Well, they got four Division One. His former team got four Division One transfers at the break. And so that, it changes for like division or for junior college baseball. I think we're going to see that a little bit in softball. And you're going to see more just younger recruits maybe go to a junior college for a couple years and then, you know, and then move on. So I think it's making softball, all of it, the whole landscape of recruiting and everything is making softball a lot stronger across the country, and all levels stronger. I don't know if it's a good reason why. It looks like I'm in favor of it. I don't love the transfer portal, but it's where we're at. But I do think everything, the current landscape of softball is making softball stronger. There's a lot more parity, every level stronger. So it's helping our sport.
Now, we're gonna move on to some other stuff. Like, did you see like the new stadium Oklahoma just opened up?
I
Like the
did.
I looked at it. I'm like, whoa, that scoreboard. I'm like, how did you manage to get someone to make that
I
scoreboard
know.
happen?
I thought it was a really cool touch, for the scoreboard. We as a staff, now we have Patty's son on our staff, so we have been, we follow it really closely. I used to work there, so we follow Oklahoma pretty closely, and so just watching their stadium, which was so overdue for them to get, but their scoreboard, and we're like, oh, that's so cool, but like we were wondering what they were going to put in the panhandle,
Mhm.
or just like really wondering. Um, you couldn't really get a gauge of how big it was. And so seeing that they were putting the line score in the panhandle, we're like, that's pretty good size. That's pretty cool. So it was just a really nice touch and really unique and pretty cool how that played out. But that stadium looks incredible. And it's pretty awesome that they got, I mean, obviously they'll fill it with, how they play and everything,
Yeah,
but it's pretty incredible for softball and the sport.
yeah, and they got their winning streak snapped last week too. So
Yeah, I think that it was coming regardless, like you
yeah,
look and it's like what they've been able to do is just like there are no words for it. But when you have that streak snapped, I think sometimes as a coach, you look at it and you're like, okay, good. Like that was going to come, and that's a pretty good time for it to happen. Obviously, maybe not an opening weekend of your new crazy nice stadium and all the buildup of that. But I can't imagine the pressure that mounts with holding a streak like that. And so I think I watched Patty's press conference after, and she was like, well, this was coming, this was coming. And so, you just kind of look at it and say, we weren't good enough today. And they were better than us. And now we get to, get back on track. And a lot of times you get to teach more lessons in a loss than in a win. So,
Right.
but what an incredible run that was. Holy
Yep.
smokes.
So for people that don't know, like how we met through the NFCA mentoring session. So like tell the people, what the NFCA is and how can they join if they're a softball coach type style.
Well, the NFCA is our National Fast Pitch Coaches Association, and it is a one stop shop for everything softball, for growing the game, for educating, for mentoring and meeting really amazing people in the game. So, everything you can possibly imagine of either learning the game, growing in the game, all of it is done through the NFCA. And so we met through a mentoring thing, which I think is one of the coolest things that the NFCA does is connect coaches. And whether it's in a mentoring session at our convention or there's mentoring triangles, we did a lot of virtual mentoring through COVID. And so just trying to figure out a way of just kind of being resources for each other. And I know for me, that is hands down one of the my most favorite thing that the NFCA does is just connect coaches. And I think that's what softball coaches do so well is connect and share and not be so stuck in secrets or hiding things, but just growing the game and growing everybody in it. And so I think it's amazing.
I think so too. The mentoring's so helpful because you get to meet other coaches from different levels and learn stuff. Like I've helped even though I'm not a mentor coach, I've helped people kind of tell them some ideas and stuff
Mhm.
like through the recent ones. And then when I had Judy Gorman as a mentor, I kind of helped her out with because some people had questions and I kind of told them because she's a Hall of Famer and some don't know who she is. So I kind of had to share some stuff.
Well, that's
So
pretty special. Well, I
yeah,
will say too that like everybody's a mentor and everybody should be a mentee. It's like I think that's what's really cool about softball is like everyone's just still wanting to learn and and then going into any conversation just wanting to learn. And so everybody has their role as mentor and everyone, if they're doing it right, they're still, in the role as mentee. So I know I've learned gosh, I can't even countless things, and I still do. And so I think it's pretty cool dynamic that softball coaches have, and then it's a pretty awesome avenue of having that mentoring for sure.
I I agree. And like Joanna told me like when I went to the convention in Vegas, she's like, "You're the queen of Zoom because I'm the king of Zoom because I was at every like education, mentoring. I didn't miss a single one during COVID because I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I'm learning here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was
So
so nice for them to have access to that.
yeah,
And then it's almost like, well, why wouldn't you? Why
yeah.
wouldn't
It's
you?
like, what else are we supposed to do? Just sit at home?
Yeah, absolutely.
I better learn.
Yep.
So now I want to kind of know the playing. Compare this like today's game to the time you played. Is it like different or
You're dating me.
similar?
Okay. You're gonna make me sound really old. Thanks a lot. Um,
Sorry.
it's changed a lot. It's changed a lot. I think that when we played, it wasn't quite as offensive. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have the not just like the really fancy nice bats, but we just didn't have the video access. We didn't have the ability to kind of break down things. that we can now. It's just so researched and it's so studied, and every resource you could need is at your fingertips. Now, I do think that um, while the game wasn't as necessarily refined, I don't know if that's the right word. It wasn't so mechanical when we played, because we just played. We just played. It wasn't. We just kind of, maybe it didn't look great, but we just really competed, and so there's just like a different feel to the game. But shoot, I will say, to see the growth of the game has been like just mind blowing, because I still go back to, my sister played before me and she was a stud of the world at Fresno State, won a national championship there. Well, when she went through, just looking at what the World Series has, and so obviously we can look at ESPN and what they've done for the sport and all of the exposure and all the games that they put on TV and everything. But when you just look in just like a little scope of just what the World Series was, which I think is the biggest indication of how our sport's grown. Um, when my sister was there, the only game that was on was the national championship. So I stayed home. I was in high school and I had prom and high school things, so I didn't necessarily go. And the only game we got to watch was the national championship game. And they had grass berms down the side of the sidelines. And so, we didn't have the seating that extended down the lines and out in the outfield. And they had grass berms. And so this really cool effect of, people just bringing blankets and sitting, and it was full. And so then when I went through, all of our postseason games were on, and all the World Series. And then that's when they did the first stadium renovation, of extending the seats down the lines and expanding capacity. And so we were a part of, in our opening ceremonies, we were a part of just like celebrating that expansion of the stadium. And now to see how many games are on regular season, how many, like, they top notch, everything postseason, and to see how many expanded, or how many like levels of expansion they've done for that stadium, and they fill it, like, come on, it's like the coolest time to play softball. The sport's grown so much. I do think that it's more explosive than it's ever been. There's more offense than there's ever been, maybe a little too much sometimes. But it's just a really exciting, athletic, dynamic sport. And so it's just really cool to see how the sport's changed and grown, and then how the following has grown and continues to grow. It's really exciting.
And as you were talking about, like how now TV is like everywhere, like we seen like now we have ESPN covering a tournament like preseason before they get into the conference games, like that Clearwater tournament.
Yeah, I mean, that Clearwater tournament is nuts. We played in it last year, and just to have that level of competition that early, and for ESPN to back it and just invest in softball and know that it's a product people want to follow, it's just incredible. It's just a huge statement to the sport, where the sport's at, and ESPN's had a huge hand in that. And Meg Aronowitz, who's the head of softball there, I think she just kind of got a promotion, and so she oversees it. But it's really cool. That level of competition that early, that level of softball, and then the ability to watch the games there and have ESPN back it is just tremendous for the sport.
Okay, so now transitioning, like let's say we're going, let's say, like recap, so far your season's going for the people to know, like how your season's going.
Well, I think our season, I would say, is we've learned a lot, we've grown a lot, and we've been fortunate to learn and grow from wins. So I think we're 17-4. Does that sound right, Stephen?
Let, let me, let's see.
I don't know. I don't know exactly. But it's been a really good start. I think there's been some lessons that we've learned of just different parts of the game picking up others. And I do still think our best days of softball are ahead of us. That's the nice thing is when you look at that record and look at that this team, although they haven't necessarily fired in all aspects consistently, they're finding ways to win and have a lot of guts and character in that way. And so when we really fire, I think this team has the ability to be incredibly special. And so far so good. So far so good. But we have a huge test this weekend, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, speaking of that big test, it's your own tournament you're hosting with these teams. Like, how long does it take you to think of the? Do you put the schedule together based on like what they recommend, or do you just say, okay, here's who you're playing, just have it,
Well,
or you
no,
make sure it's set?
we're really particular about our schedule. My assistant Matt Michael is the best numbers analytics mind in the game, and so he handpicks our home schedule, so or our home tournaments, and we work together for everything else. And so when we put together our home tournaments, now the SEC starts this weekend, and we have a first weekend bye, and so it allows us to host another tournament and then also kind of see what's going on in the SEC before we really dive in, which is kind of cool. But we are really particular, and it's just ultimately who's gonna challenge us, and who is gonna have a great year. Like you try to predict who's gonna do really well because you want to play teams that win a lot, and these teams win a lot, and so that's the added challenge. Is not only are they strong, they're really well coached. They do the softball piece really well. They're also teams that know how to win, and so it's a really good challenge for our team. And then they add really good value to our overall resume. So we are really picky about who we play. It takes a while to put our schedule together.
So you guys start off with Alabama. I think they beat Alabama this season already. You know, like they pulled off the upset and beat Alabama. So are you feel confident in like you can beat them type style?
Well, I think that's the thing with softball, is you just never know. You never know on any given day, and you just have to figure out how to be better than the team in the other dugout. I am confident that my team is ready, but you just never know how the game's going to go. South Alabama is incredibly strong, and they have one of the best pitchers in the country, and overall a pitching staff that just does a tremendous job. So they've always matched up well with Alabama, but if you really dive into their schedule, they don't give up many runs across the board. And I mean, they just I think tied with Arizona this past weekend, who has a really explosive offense. I think they tied 1-1. They must have had a drop dead, so maybe 1-1 in extra innings. And so when you know that they have a staff of that caliber, you know it's going to be a grind, and you're going to have to be on point with everything else because they don't give up many runs. And so it's a really good matchup for us going into conference, because that's a lot of the time what SEC games look like. And so it'll be really good. It'll be really good.
So we know softball's grown, and now we moved on, and now you see there's now bat testing going on. Is like, do you think the bat testing was a long overdue thing, or do you think it was not necessary to have?
Oh, I think it's necessary to have. I think that it was in response to bats getting really hot, and so I think it was. I don't know exactly when it was implemented, and um, I don't remember exactly, but I do know that it's needed. I think there was an influx of home runs and just kind of really questioning, what if the bats were safe, if the exit velos were safe, because ultimately that's what the question is it safe for how close and our game is. You just want to make sure that it's played in the right way. And so, yeah, I think bat testing is critical. Whenever it was implemented, it was time, maybe before. But yeah, I definitely think that with how high the stakes are in our game now, you just need to always make sure we're checking in and making sure that everything's done the right way as much as we can.
Right. So now it's all over. It started in the 4 years, and now it's moved down to the junior colleges. I'm not sure if it's in the high school level they're doing the testing, but like it's getting to that point. You notice, and also a lot of bats were getting rejected either because of there's cracks and stuff. Like I have a bat that's been rejected during the COVID year. I was like, okay, I was gonna put it back into storage just to get it replaced, but when COVID happened, I'm like, okay, my prized possession. I That's my bat. I tell people like, this is what you need to know. Don't have a bat like this when you enter your college years, people.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll catch you. They'll get you.
Yeah. And then like if you mess around, like I messed around once with a bat. With the Louisville's, the grip thing, it comes up. I was like, I kind of was like, I was telling one of the umpires about it. I'm like, oh shit, I should not have said that. Oops.
Oh,
I
yeah.
should not have said that because it's a known defect. I'm like, I don't want to bust them. I don't want to
Yeah.
bust the other team or Louisville for that grip.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's nice. I
oops.
mean, they do a good job though of checking to make sure everything's safe and um, making sure that it's operating the right way.
All right. I'm going to wrap this interview up with you, Courtney. Thank you so much for sitting down with us
My
and
pleasure.
doing this interview with me. If there's anything I need, I'll reach out to you and if we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Sounds good. This was a great way to start my day. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you.